Picture this, you wake up one morning ready to visit the bank and excited about your savings. But when you arrive, you are hit with a shocking revelation. A portion of your hard-earned money has been taken to pay down the national debt. As unlikely as it may seem, this could become a harsh reality for Kenya. Governments can sometimes implement measures that directly affect personal savings during times of severe financial distress. For example, in situations where banks are on the verge of collapse, a government may require them to use customer deposits to stabilize the financial system, as seen during the 2008 financial crisis in several countries. Additionally, special taxes or levies might be imposed on savings accounts to raise funds for paying down national debt, especially when public finances are strained. In extreme cases, capital controls could be enacted, restricting withdrawals from banks to maintain economic stability. While it might not involve outright seizure, high inflation or currency devaluation can erode the value of savings, leaving you with less than what you initially had. Moreover, changes in banking regulations can allow banks to access funds under specific circumstances, especially during declared financial emergencies. Kenya, once hailed as a beacon of economic potential in Africa, now finds itself grappling with a myriad of economic challenges that threaten to unravel decades of progress. The current state of economy is a complex web of historical missteps, poor governance, and global economic forces. This analysis delves into how Kenya arrived at this point and what might be done to steer the country back to a path of sustainable growth. Kenya's economic journey began with high hopes at independence in 1963. The country inherited a relatively robust infrastructure, a strong agricultural base, and a promising tourism sector. In the early years, Kenya's economy grew steadily, driven by agriculture, which employed a significant portion of the population and contributed heavily to the GDP. The adoption of policies that favored large-scale farming, particularly in coffee and tea, positioned Kenya as a leading exporter in these commodities. However, the seeds of economic trouble were sown early. The land reforms of the 1960s and 70s, intended to redistribute land more equitably, led to land disputes and fragmentation that undermined agricultural productivity. Coupled with the government's over-reliance on a few cash crops, the agricultural sector became vulnerable to global price fluctuation and climate change, setting the stage for economic instability. Governance has been at the heart of Kenya's economic woes. Over the years, corruption has permeated every level of government, bleeding the country of resources that could have been used for development. The Golden Bag scandal of the 1990s, where billions were siphoned from the treasury through a bogus gold export scheme, was just one of the many examples of how corruption has crippled the economy. Poor governance has also manifested in mismanagement of public funds, bloated public sector wages, and an inability to implement long-term economic policies effectively. Successive governments have prioritized short-term political gains over sustainable economic policies, leading to a cycle of debt and underdevelopment. The frequent changes in policy directions have created an unpredicted business environment, discouraging both local and foreign investments. Kenya's debt has ballooned to a staggering 10 trillion, reflecting the country's precarious financial health. Annual debt repayments have reached nearly 1 trillion Kenya shillings, a sum so large that it leaves little room for other critical government expenditures, including salaries, funding for counties, and investments in essential services. One of the most troubling aspects of Kenya's debt crisis is the discrepancy between debt repayments and the figures reported by the central bank. Reports indicate that Kenya has repaid 5.6 trillion in debts over the past 9 years. However, the central bank still shows a debt of 8.3 trillion, the same amount reported during the previous administration. This discrepancy raises serious questions about the accuracy of the government's financial records and whether the actual debt is much higher than reported, suggesting possible mismanagement or corruption. One of the most pressing concerns is that Kenya allocates over 70% of its revenue to servicing its national debts. This staggering figure means the government spends more on debt repayments than on essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Such a heavy debt load is unsustainable and raises serious doubts about the country's ability to fulfill its financial obligation. The management of odious debts, loans taken without proper authorization and misallocated for purposes that do not benefit the populace, has come under scrutiny. There are concerns that the government is prioritizing debt repayments over crucial services and support for business, steering the nation towards economic ruin. To avert a financial catastrophe, there is an urgent need for reforms in public finance management. The government must prioritize financial stability and implement sustainable economic policies. Recommendations include conducting a forensic audit to differentiate between legitimate and illegitimate portions of the debts, followed by negotiations to address the odious debts. Addressing Kenya's economic mess requires a multifaceted approach that tackles both immediate and long-term challenges. First and foremost, the government must prioritize governance reforms to curb corruption and improve the efficiency of public spending. Strengthening institutions that oversee the management of public funds and holding officials accountable is critical. Secondly, Kenya needs to diversify its economy beyond agriculture and infrastructure. Investing in technology, manufacturing, and value-added industries can create jobs and reduce the country's reliance on external debts. Additionally, improving the business environment by ensuring policy stability and reducing bureaucratic red tape can attract more investment. Furthermore, there is a need for prudent fiscal management. The government must strike a balance between borrowing for development and maintaining debt sustainability. Transparent and inclusive dialogue on public spending priorities can help align government projects with the needs of the population. There's a pressing need for transparency and accountability. Citizens must demand answers from their leaders and be prepared to take legal action if necessary. Kenya's situation can be compared to that of Mozambique, where the country's government borrowed significant amounts to finance various projects without disclosing these debts to the parliament or to the public. In 2016, these undisclosed debts were declared odious by the Constitutional Court, which ruled that the debts were illegitimate due to the lack of transparency and accountability in their approval process. This declaration led to the severe legal and financial consequences for those involved, including criminal charges against former government officials and lenders. The Mozambique case underscores the critical importance of transparency in managing public finances. For Kenya, the lessons from Mozambique are clear. the Kenyan government must prioritize transparency in all financial dealings and ensure that all borrowing is conducted openly, with the parliament oversight and public awareness. To avert a potential economic crisis, Kenya may need to consider implementing a legal framework that allows the renegotiation or even cancellation of odious debts, ensuring that public funds are used effectively and ethically. When examining Kenya's economic situation, parallels can also be drawn with Ghana. In recent years, Ghana experienced a significant surge in inflation, primarily due to mismanagement of public finances and over-reliance on external borrowing. The government's inability to control inflation led many citizens to favor the US dollar over their local currency, reflecting a lack of confidence in the national economy. This scenario serves as a cautionary tale for Kenya, illustrating the potential dangers of economic mismanagement and the consequences of a high debt burden. Kenya's rising inflation rates and public debt levels indicate a similar trend, raising concerns about the government's ability to manage its fiscal policies effectively. Moreover, the countries face the challenge of restoring public trust in government institutions. In Ghana, the population dissatisfaction with the economic conditions has led to public protest and calls for accountability for government officials. Similarly, in Kenya, citizens are increasingly demanding transparency in budgeting and fiscal management, highlighting the need for reforms to enhance public finance governance. Kenya's debt crisis is a ticking time bomb, and the clock is running out. Well, for today, that's it. Make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell icon for more videos like this.